undefeated at the time, but played really well. You've talked about this a couple of times here on the program. So let me give you a shout out because you've handicapped this team really well all season long and did so again.
Okay.
I know the scoreboard didn't reflect a Vanderbilt win, but it did, in my opinion, show marked improvement. What was your overall takeaways from the game there in Tuscaloosa?
Well, I think number one, Vanderbilt showed that they can win that game. I mean, I don't think the score reflects how close the game was. They had 2 turnovers in the red zone.
Yep.
And if you turn those 2 turnovers into points, it's obviously a completely, different football game. Bama gets the high marks for getting it done. Absolutely. But if you're Vanderbilt, you're thinking the only thing that stopped us was ourselves. I think they're going to regret, getting away from the run. They averaged 7.5 yards a carry on 18 carries. So why in the world don't you have more carries than 18 carries when you're averaging 7.5 yards a carry? And, I know everybody would like for Diego Pavia to have an ego check. Maybe that's a little bit of the ego check, he needs, if he needs one. I don't know. But, he's the last one who I thought would cost them the football game. And, he cost them the football game. With those 2 turnovers. So that was unfortunate for them. But, I think there's a lot more that's really good for Vanderbilt. That's obviously a very tough place to go play. But my overwhelming, sentiment from that game was watching the Alabama players and the fans and how excited they were to win that game.
Yeah.
I can't ever remember them being that excited to beat Vanderbilt. That meant that Vanderbilt team had become something worthy of celebrating beating. And I don't know if that acknowledgement means anything to anybody else, but I think they understood when it was over that, it could have been 2 in a row.
Yeah, I think anytime that you're reinventing yourself, whether it's a human being or it's a team, there are those moments where it's like, okay, this is different. This is different from what we've seen before. This is different from the way that it's looked before. And you spoke about Diego Pavia, and he's such an amazing figure, and I think there'll be a great documentary 10 years down the road about his life and about his gravitas. But one of the big things, it's kind of twofold, because that confidence and that bravado and that beating the chest, to me, is what kind of anchors what this team is like.
Absolutely.
Going forward one week to another. But at the same time, like you said, when you have a fumble and you have an interception, as that graphic showed, it does cause the other team to celebrate a little bit louder. The decibels to go up a little bit louder. Talk about that juxtaposition there with Diego Pavia.
I don't think you get one without the other.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, so I think, you've got to let him be him, because, let's face it, when Tiger Woods tried to become this, kinder, gentler person, he was not the same golfer. All right. And, Diego Pavia, look at him. He is not your prototypical college quarterback. What's he, about 6 foot, 200 pounds?
Right.
But he believes in himself 900% with everything that he does, and it's infectious to everyone. So you don't want him to get away from that. I'm sure you could say, well, you don't want him to say this and you don't want him to say that. Guys, regardless of what he said going into this game, Alabama had this game circled on their schedule. There's not anything more you could say that was going to make Alabama want to win this game more.
Right.
If anything, he's just propelling his guys further along. Hey, we're going to go down there. We're going to win. We're not afraid of this thing. So I always say, if you need motivation to win, you're in the wrong sport.
Yeah.
All right.
100%.
And so I think that too much can be made up of that. And I think, when it comes to players like Diego Pavia, you have to embrace all of it. All right. Because if you try to change it, you're going to change all of it.
Right.
And you don't want to change that.
Yeah.
It's the best thing Vanderbilt's had in forever.
Absolutely. Another mark of a really good team, though, Cory, is the ability to bounce back. And so for every team that can resettle themselves after a setback, Nick Saban, about this all the time. I feel like Nick Saban's best teams were the ones that came right after a loss. With this Vanderbilt football team, with the expectations so sky high, now there's a bit of a breather, an off week this week before another gauntlet next week, going to Death Valley or hosting LSU there in a big game there at home. What's this like? This week like as they get prepared for that one, both putting that one to bed and then getting ready for LSU?
Well, it's a pretty good time for a bye. You go down and play Alabama. It's a chance for them to to get healed up a little bit after what was their biggest test of the season, and to go back and see what they did right and what they did wrong, and know that they're going to play a team that really needs to win this football game. I mean, this is a must win for LSU, and it's kind of a must win, for them, because whoever loses this game is now squarely behind the playoff 8 ball. LSU has South Carolina this weekend, and that's a must-win game for South Carolina. So South Carolina is going to come at them with everything, and then the week after this, LSU, after they play Vanderbilt, they got Texas A&M.
Yep.
So you risk a look-ahead game, for Texas A&M, but they can't afford to. They're not good enough. Obviously LSU is very good, but their offense has not been what they expect it to be.
Right.
And I expect the game with LSU to be a very close football game in Nashville. And I think it will, like the Alabama game, it will probably be decided by turnovers.
Corey, I look ahead while we're on the topic of the bye week. After the bye week, you host LSU, host Missouri, and then you go to Austin, and then you host Auburn. How much of an advantage do you think that those LSU and Mizzou games are in Nashville rather than on the road?
Well, I mean, they're always an advantage. Last year they went to Mizzou and lost in overtime. I mean, that's a game that they would like to have really, really had back. I think the LSU game is the big one. I mean, Death Valley is a unique place, especially. I'm sorry, I'm very popular in getting
hey, if that's Theo Vaughn or Pavia's mom, you can
or Johnny Manziel.
I had to tell Pavia's mom to stop calling. So, Death Valley is a very, very tough place to play, especially if it's it's a night game. It's crazy. So I think that one is very, very important. I don't think anybody's gonna confuse Mizzou for toughest elements to play in college football.
Right.
All right. So I think that's very big, and I think it's very interesting with Texas on there. What is Texas? Who's quarterbacking Texas at that point?
Right.
And because when a team gets struggling, now they're looking over the shoulder and look, the boogeyman's out to get them. What's wrong with us? And you can get them down. And if you remember, Vanderbilt almost beat Texas last year.
That's right.
They had the Longhorns on the rope last. So they're not going to be afraid to go down there. And if they stick with Arch Manning, I mean, the young man's got to play better.
Yeah.
And he knows that, and they know that. And it's tough to go away from what was built up in the offseason down there.
Yeah.
But they went from number 1 to unranked. That's hard to do.
Yeah.
That's hard to do.
Yeah. And what, less than
Penn State.
About 4 or 5 weeks or so.
I haven't seen something like that since UNC basketball a few years ago.
Yeah.
Like the same story.
Right. Just like literally everybody's projections are here. But this, like they said, that's the reason why they play the games. You mentioned rushing, and they were able to rush against Alabama for 7 yards a carry. It was really led by Cedric Alexander. What does he bring? Yeah, very good player. And it kind of almost introduced himself, I think, in a lot of ways to everybody. I think everybody knew about Eli Stowers going into it. But do you think that he's a guy that they will rely on? Because, like you said, he looked like he was moving really well and cutting through that Bama defense.
Well, I mean, he's the lead dog, but it's a really big pack.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a lot of people that they don't mind giving the football to.
Right.
And I've banged on this the whole way. They have the best offensive line I've seen Vanderbilt ever have.
Right.
And so I don't want to say it doesn't matter who you give the ball to, but they have more talented guys back there than they've had before. They have more speed back there than they've had before. So if these guys up front can continue to block, they're all going to be pretty good. And I think the other thing that, helps a guy like Alexander is you have to account for Pavia in the rushing game. Right. I don't know what the team numbers are now, but Pavia was still their leading rusher going into last week.
Right.
And largely that's because they'd spread out the carries so much. Otherwise it would be Alexander. Alexander's, like I said, he's the lead dog back there. He's very good, but they have a lot of other good players that they don't mind giving the ball to.
Absolutely. Speaking of good players, there's a former Vanderbilt Commodore that's headed back to Vandy. I don't know if you saw this news, and sorry to spring this on you if you haven't. But Jordan Matthews is coming back to be a consultant. Obviously, 10 years in the NFL. How important is that to be able to have a guy that's not necessarily their age, he's older than these guys, but he's still young enough to understand what college football is, the trials, the tribulations that they have to go through, and to be able to have him in-house with Clark Lee?
Well, I mean, look, you always want to have people, if you're a school like Vanderbilt, you want to have people that Vanderbilt is important to, especially in this NIL era where there may not be the allegiance to schools that there used to be. Kids hop around so much with the transfer portal, some people to help breathe in some of that, love of university and importance of university. But I also think, here's a guy who made some money in the NFL.
Yeah.
This is the first time you're having to deal with players who have money for the first time. And this is a guy who can relate to them and tell them, guys, I know you think you're going to make this money all your life. You're probably not.
Yeah.
So let's sit down and talk about what you're doing with it. I mean, like Pavi, I hear he's in a 7-figure payday, and he should be. But he may never see that again.
Right.
I mean, he's got to be smart with that. This might be his opportunity for lifetime money, to make a difference. And so when you've got a guy who's kind of been through that process, to talk through those guys, I think that can be beneficial as well.
Absolutely. And speaking of the NFL, before we let you go, I have to talk literally one thing about the current NFL. And you know what? All the maybe some sadness that came after Saturday with Vanderbilt, it was all corrected on Sunday as your Tennessee Titans got a big win against the Arizona Cardinals, first one of the year. What did you make of that crazy football game?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I watched the first half. And I was like, it's the same old garbage I've been watching all year.
Nobody blames you.
And Nashville SC, our MLS team, just won the U.S. Open Cup.
Oh, nice.
And so during the second half, they were having a U.S. Open Cup trophy celebration with their fans, and I had to go over and cover that and miss the second half of the game. Now, I've since watched the second half of the game. So
right.
I've seen it. But so I'm over there, and, I'm kind of watching it on my phone while the celebration is going on. And as Nashville SC hits the stage, this Titans rally starts. And so like all these good vibes at Geodis Park are going on, and everybody's getting hyped up, and the Titans rally is going on. And all of a sudden it's like 21-19, and this double rainbow comes up over Geodis Park, and Cam Ward, like 30 seconds later, hits Calvin Ridley for this 30-yard strike into field goal range. And I'm like, what is happening? Do we get to have nice things again? I'm not used to this. No, I'm not used to nice things. And believe me, there isn't one person in all of Nashville or all of Tennessee who felt confident about Joey Sly hitting that 22-yard field goal.
Oh, no.
We were all ready for it to hit the upright, okay? All of us. So there was a big sigh of relief. Brian Callahan is a very nice man, and you like to see good things happen to good people. It has been a very, very tough go for him.
Yeah.
There is a lot of blame to go around. There has been a lot of atrocities in building this roster over the last 5-6 years.
Yeah.
There's a reason they're on 3 GMs in like 5 years, because the failures of the last 3 years of the John Robinson era were massive. And then you had the Vrabel year and the Rand Carthon year. I mean, they have so few cornerstone pieces that they've got in the draft in the last 5 years. It's like you should be able, like your sister or your daughter or your grandmother or whoever. I guess I'm sounding sexist. I apologize. Fills out the NCAA bracket pool and picks the team by colors or mascot.
Yeah.
You would think you could draft like that and do better than the Titans have done.
Yeah,
the last
that's true.
years.
That's so true. That is so.
Just throw darts at a dartboard.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I mean, you couldn't do worse. You couldn't do. Look, 3 years in a row, they drafted in the first round Isaiah Wilson, Caleb Farley, and Traylon Burks, who just got released moments ago.
Woo. Yeah.
That's the worst string of first-round draft picks that I would challenge anyone to go against.
That's a horrible hit percentage. I think we hit better in Major League Baseball.
Well, that's zero. That hit percentage is zero.
Yeah, exactly. Cory, always appreciate your time, your insight, your hilarity. It's always great. Enjoy that Titans win, and we'll check back in with you once again with the Vanderbilt Commodores as they have another huge game coming up in a couple of weeks.